Dr. Mark Dixon for Business 225, and today we're going to go through the Project 3 guidelines and rubric to give you an idea of what to expect with your Project 3. So let's go again into assignment information, Project 3 guidelines and rubrics, and we're going to talk through the scenario and what you're looking to accomplish with your Project 3. So again, I sound like a broken record, but you are building off of what you've already done through Project 1 and Project 2. So Project 1 helped you do the research process and really analyze what's happening in the industry. Project 2 brought you to the point where you had started to visualize it and create the foundation for what you're doing from a presentation and visualization standpoint. And now you're at the point where you need to engage with your stakeholders and make the argument as to why your diversification strategy makes sense. So from a competency standpoint, you're going to utilize the information from industry and scholarly sources to inform problem solving and decision making. You're going to analyze quantitative and qualitative data to solve problems and make decisions that impact organizations and their stakeholders. And you're going to communicate professionally to diverse internal and external audiences. So what you need to start thinking about here is your stakeholders are likely a diverse group of people. And in the discussion boards that we're going to be doing, prepping for this particular project, you're going to start to think about, how am I going to position myself as far as what do I need to consider when I'm developing this presentation? How do I account for my different stakeholders and who are my important ones? Who am I really trying to drive home the message for? So you want to start thinking about that as far as how you develop your Project 3 presentation. So your scenario is that your presentation to the leadership panel of your company was well received. So they liked what you gave them. Now you must create a presentation for a wider audience, which is going to include stakeholders that are from both inside and outside of your company. And you're going to need to include your decisions and recommendations, which were approved by the leadership panel. Remember that your presentation must convey professionalism and be visually appealing as well as informative. So you did more kind of shell work in your previous one. In Project 2, you really laid the foundation for this. I'm not looking for you to resubmit Project 2 as Project 3. You really need to, you can take elements from that. So you can certainly take the visuals that you developed and you can incorporate them into this project, but you're really creating a polished final artifact that can show your audience what you've done, like what research process you've completed, and make the argument as to why this diversification strategy makes sense and why it makes sense to the variety of stakeholders. And you're going to want to look at that from both the internal and external perspectives. So let's go through the directions. You're going to create that presentation of your research and findings using your Project 2, including your decision and rationale, so that you're using the framework of Project 2 to really enhance and build out this project. So you're going to create a business presentation for your internal and external stakeholders, and you're going to first identify your key message to both internal and external stakeholders. So this is really explaining what it is that you're looking to do. So, some different ways to approach this would be setting the frame as far as what's happening in the industry and the need for diversification. It can be explaining that there is a need to diversify, and this is why this particular industry makes the most sense. It's basically setting the foundation for your audience to understand what this presentation is all about. Now, in the past, I've had students that have lost some points for not clearly defining their key message. So if you have an indirect message in the presentation, I generally give you some credit, but I'm really looking for you to state what your key message is. So it's fine to be blatant about it. It's fine to have a slide that says key message because I'm looking to see what that key message is and that you're communicating that out to your audience. You're going to illustrate your key points related to this diversification strategy and what's happening from your research process using your visualization. So again, you've developed all of these. You also have a lot of your notes from your initial Project 1 that can help build out what you're doing from a speaker note perspective. And you have the visualizations that you developed in your Project 2. And basically, you're going to tell a story here. So when you're telling the story, what I'm looking for you to do is include the visual elements, include some text and key points on your slides, and then also expand on this through your speaker notes. So you're basically telling a whole story here to your audience so that they understand what your diversification strategy is and why they need to pay attention to it. Then you're also going to communicate your decision about diversification based on your analysis of the data and research. So this is another element of this, which is kind of overlapping into some of the previous piece. But you're what ultimately going to do is use your visualizations to tell the story, and you're going to include quantitative and qualitative data there. So remember, quantitative is going to include like those hard numbers, the metrics. Qualitative is more tangible or intangible. It's more of those factors that kind of softly explain it, or based on what people are saying, or what based on previous history. It's not quite as tangible, not quite as hard as the metrics, but it's good to have a combination of both. You're also going to want to make sure that you explicitly state what the likelihood of success is based on your data and research collected. Now, I understand that some of this can be inferred based on the visualizations and data you included, but what I'm looking for you explicitly to do is tell your audience how likely this venture is to be successful, and explain why you think that. Then you're also going to need to make sure that you're discussing the impact that moving to the new industry will have on the organization and its internal and external stakeholders. So as a result of this business decision, are we going to need to spin up a new business unit? Are our staff going to need to be trained on different processes that they were not necessarily familiar with? Do we have an impact to the greater community? Are we doing something to better the planet because we're diversifying into an industry that is more green? You want to think about all those types of things and identify them in the presentation. And then next, you're going to detail your recommendations for moving forward. So you're going to summarize the findings of the research performed. Again, you're drawing insight here. So you're taking the key points that you want your audience to walk away with. You're giving them a lot of information, and generally people are not going to capture all of that. They're not going to remember everything you said. But if you restate in your summary, this is what I want you to remember. So these are the three main topics that are really critical to this presentation. That's what I'm looking for, something along those lines. And it doesn't have to just be three. I would recommend at least be a minimum of 3 key points, but you can put as many key points as you want there. Just whatever you think your audience should walk away with, put it on the summary slide and explain it in your speaker notes. Including research, conclusions, and reasoning is really, it's more of a structure of this presentation. So it's making sure that you've researched what you're presenting to this audience, that these are valid, researched data. It's not just something that you came up with on the fly. It's something that you've actually been informed on. Conclusions and reasoning, it's really, I'm looking for you to back up what you're saying through solid reasoning. So you want to make sure that whatever you're saying throughout your presentation is backed by research, and it makes sense based on what you've presented and the story you're telling. And then describing the rationale behind your recommendations. So you don't need to go through the 3 decision-making models like you did in Project 2 for this particular presentation, but you want to explain how you came to your conclusions. So what you're going to want to do is, if you use the intuitive decision-making model, state that there. Say, based on the intuitive decision-making model, which includes X, Y, and Z, I came to these conclusions using that framework for this diversification strategy. So you're basically looking to justify how you made your decision making. Now, that's probably not something that you would normally do in a business presentation, but for the sake of this class, it shows a mastery of the topics. So that's why it's included. This presentation needs to be 10 to 15 slides. Again, not penalized if you're over, but please make sure that you at least include 10 slides. And you need to, again, include citations and references. So on slides where you need to attribute an idea that was not your original idea, make sure you include the in-text citation at the bottom of the slide. That's all you need to do. It doesn't have to be in line with the text like it does in a research paper, but it does need to be included on the slide to show that you're attributing a source. And then you also need to make sure you include a references list or a references slide that shows all of the references that were included in this particular presentation. So we'll go again through the criteria here for the Project 3 rubric. These are, again, the key points that you want to make sure are included in whatever you submit for this Project 3 project. So make sure that whatever comes out of Sumo Web Text you are comfortable has sufficiently addressed each of these particular topic areas. So you're constructing a business presentation that's going to include your identifying your key message. So what is the key message for your stakeholders? You're going to illustrate your key points. These are the main points that you're trying to make as a result of your research process. You can support that with your visuals and speaker notes, but make sure you make the point in your presentation as to what those are. You're also going to tell your story. So this is really a little bit more of subjective. So this particular criteria is saying you've told a story with this presentation. So you've used a combination of data, visuals, research, and speaker commentary to really tie everything together and create that story. Then you're also going to want to make sure that you've used visualizations to tell the story that include a combination of that quantitative and qualitative data. You're going to make sure that you specifically address the likelihood of success that's based on your data and research collected. Make sure it's not just something you're inferring based on what you're presenting for data, but you're explicitly stating, based on my research and these XYZ key points, I feel that this venture has a high likelihood of success. You want to do something along those lines. And then you're going to communicate your decision about diversification by discussing the impact that moving to the new industry has on the organization and its internal and external stakeholders. Again, here you want to say, if we do this particular business venture, we're going to need to spin up this new business unit, and it's going to increase our profits. It's going to increase operating costs. We're going to have to hire new staff. We're going to have to train existing staff on the value proposition of this. And we also know that by moving to this industry, we're helping with triple bottom line, because we're now creating a green service offering that is better for the environment. It's going to lower pollution. You want to address all those types of points because now you're touching on all the various stakeholders associated with this venture. You're going to want to make sure you summarize your findings. So include those key points, the takeaways that you want your audience to walk away with. You're going to ensure that this presentation is supported by research that's going to inform anything you say from a conclusion and reasoning standpoint. You're going to include the rationale behind how you came up with these decisions. So what was the model that you used? I used the intuitive, or I used the rational decision-making model, which includes XYZ, and that helped me come to these conclusions based on my research. Make sure that this presentation is a polished artifact, that you run it through the SNHU Writing Center, that you use Grammarly.com or something similar to help you ensure that you're not taking away from your message with errors that make your presentation less readable and can take away some of the credibility. And then ensure that you're supporting with citations and references, so include those in-text citations on slides when you need to attribute an idea that was not your original thought, and include a references list slide so that you've attributed all of the sources associated with your research process. And that's the gist of the rubric. Again, just to give you a quick overview, in the Sumo web text, it's going to walk you through this. It gives you the Project 3 overview, the scenario. It's going to have you talk about how you're going to create your presentation. I tend to prefer for these PowerPoint, but if you do use other softwares or other solutions, that's fine. You're going to construct that business presentation, and it's going to walk you through the three main parts of how to do that. And it is going to, and then you're going to submit your final piece of this, which is going to be that polished artifact. So again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. We can also do through the general discussion forum. We can create a forum for everybody to discuss any questions or concerns. I'm here to help you be successful with this project. Hopefully this recording gives you a better understanding of what I'm looking for and helps you to create that framework so that you're more confident starting this project. But again, reach out with any questions and good luck with it. Thank you, everyone, and take care.